Good morning. Thank you all so much for being here. We really appreciate it, and we're very hopeful that you can help us get this important message out today regarding this case and our victim notification system. My name is Ashley Hoff. I'm the United States Attorney for the Western District of Texas. Again, I want to thank all of you for being here with us today in San Antonio. With me on the stage here is FBI Special Agent in Charge Oliver Rich, Army CID Cyber Special Agent in Charge Mark Martin, FBI Supervisory Special Agent Matthew Selman, Criminal Chief from our office Christina Playton, and the AUSAs that are involved in this case, Michael Galdo and Karthik Srinivasan. We're here today to announce the unsealing of an indictment from our Austin Division charging Mark Sokolovsky for his alleged role conspiring to operate the Raccoon InfoStealer malware, which was used to steal sensitive records, including login credentials, financial information, and other personal data from victims around the world, including those here in the Western District of Texas. As part of our effort to identify and notify potential victims, we are also announcing the launch of a website at raccoon.ic3.gov that will link to information about the case and allow potential victims to check whether their email address appears in data stolen by Raccoon InfoStealer. Special Agent in Charge Rich will describe this more for you momentarily. We are unsealing this indictment so that we can begin the court authorization victim notification process. The indictment, which you have copies of it, charges the defendant with 4 counts related to Raccoon InfoStealer. Conspiracy to violate Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, that's one of the counts, in violation of 18 United States Code, Section 371-1030. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud in violation of United States Code, Title 18, Section 1349. And money laundering conspiracy in violation of 18 United States Code, Section 1956H. And aggravated identity theft in violation of 18 United States Code, Section 1028A. If this defendant is convicted, he faces a maximum penalty of 5 years imprisonment on count 1, 20 years imprisonment on counts 2 and 3, and a mandatory 2-year consecutive sentence for the 4th count of the indictment. That's the aggravated identity theft, as well as fines and restitution that's owed to the victims of this crime. The defendant is a citizen of the Ukraine. He was found in the Netherlands and arrested there pursuant to a request made by the United States. He remains in custody in the Netherlands pending any further legal action related to his extradition. The content of the indictment, as it pertains to Mr. Sokolovsky, are the formal allegations. As we all know, all defendants are innocent until proven guilty, and we are prepared to present our case in court when Mr. Sokolovsky arrives into the United States to face these charges. We are unsealing the indictment today so that we can inform the public about Raccoon InfoStealer and begin the notification process for the potential impacted victims. We know this crime has touched millions. The evidence gathered so far by the FBI shows that Raccoon InfoStealer was used to steal millions of confidential records and credentials from computer users around the world, including, once again, those here in the Western District of Texas. Raccoon InfoStealer was a malware as a service. That's capital M, lowercase a, capital S. Individuals who deployed Raccoon InfoStealer to steal data leased access to the malware for approximately $200 worth of cryptocurrency. They then used various ruses, such as email phishing, to install the malware onto computers around the world. Raccoon InfoStealer then stole personal data and information from the computers. The data stolen by Raccoon InfoStealer was available both to the people who deployed it and to the operators of Raccoon InfoStealer. Law enforcement has not secured copies of all records stolen by Raccoon, although our investigation continues and we are working to seize more stolen data so that we can notify additional victims. But the FBI has identified more than 50 million credentials and forms of identification, including email addresses, bank accounts, cryptocurrency addresses, and credit card numbers in the data that we have been able to acquire to date. Working with the FBI, we are here beginning a multi-step notification process for potential victims. We have designed this process balancing the need to notify potential victims, protect their credentials and personal identifying information, and to hold the criminal offenders responsible. We do not know the full scope and scale of the financial losses or harm caused by raccoon infostealer. But we do know that data was stolen and both used directly by those who leased access to Raccoon and resold on cybercrime forums. That's why we're asking for potential victims to come forward if they suspect that they have been affected by Raccoon infostealer, and we have created the website that you see here before you. It's the second one listed on the poster there, that allows them to check to see if their email address was in the data stolen by Raccoon infostealer recovered by law enforcement. Now, October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Special Agent in Charge Rich will speak more about cybercrime and some practical steps individuals can take to protect themselves and their computers, as well as information about how they can report cybercrime to law enforcement. And that's seen in the very first email address, or I mean not email address, but the link there for the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. That's where you can report internet crime. The type of malware that is involved in this particular case feeds the cybercrime ecosystem. It grabs valuable information and allows cyber criminals to steal from innocent Americans and other citizens around the world. My office is dedicated to prosecuting cybercrime and working with our law enforcement partners to bring offenders to justice. Hiding behind a keyboard does not grant them impunity to prey upon our citizens, and when necessary, we will reach across the globe to apprehend those who are committing acts of cybercrime that harm unsuspecting victims in our communities in the United States. These matters require close coordination and cooperation among numerous law enforcement entities worldwide, and that approach in this particular case has been incredibly successful. I will now turn it over to Special Agent in Charge, Oliver Rich.
Thank you, Ashley. Good morning. First, I would like to thank our private sector and law enforcement partners who worked tirelessly along with the FBI during this investigation. This case was worked in collaboration with members of the FBI Austin Cyber Crimes Task Force, which include the Army Criminal Investigation Division, Austin Police Department, the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, the Round Rock Police Department, and the Texas Department of Public Safety. Working together, we were able to identify the actors and the infrastructure behind the Raccoon infostealer malware. The tremendous efforts of the members of this task force led to the disruption of this cyber threat and the indictment of Sokolovsky. The FBI first learned of this crime by way of a long-standing relationship with our private sector partners. The relationship between the FBI and our private sector partners are critical to identify, investigate, and disrupt malicious cyber activity every day, nationwide and around the world. Working together is the only way we're going to stay ahead of these cyber threats. Cyber criminals can victimize millions of users in a very short period of time from anywhere in the world. It is important to report internet crime and cyber threats to law enforcement as soon as possible. As U.S. Attorney Huff just mentioned, this investigation has identified more than 50 million credentials and forms of identification including email addresses, bank accounts, cryptocurrency addresses, and credit card numbers. So we are working very hard to identify and notify additional victims. To that end, the FBI has created a website where members of the public can input their email addresses to check to see if that email address is contained within the raccoon info stealer data that we have in the government's possession. And again, the website is raccoon.ic3.gov. If the email address is contained within that data, the FBI will send an email address to the user notifying them that they are a potential victim of the raccoon info stealer. Potential victims are then asked to visit the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center at www.ic3.gov to fill out a detailed complaint and share any pertinent information regarding personal damages or losses suffered. I would also like to add that the FBI received significant assistance from law enforcement partners in Italy and the Netherlands to dismantle the digital infrastructure supporting the raccoon info stealer in March of 2022. Our international partners preserved crucial evidence to take this malware offline. With their help and that of the diligent prosecutors at the United States Attorney's Office here in the Western District of Texas, we were able to disrupt the raccoon info stealer, retrieve stolen victim data, and gather evidence to support this indictment. And lastly, I think it is important to point out that many of the victims of the raccoon info stealer malware were compromised through an email phishing campaign. Victims received an email with a link that allowed the malicious actors to access the targeted systems. I would also point out, that was mentioned earlier, that Sokolovsky offered the raccoon info stealer as a malware as a service to other malicious actors who were engaged in nefarious acts from anywhere in the world. So this case, and many others like this one, serve as a reminder to us all to exercise effective cyber hygiene and cybersecurity practices. For example, users should avoid opening emails from unknown sources and never click on links from unverified sources. Whenever possible, use multi-factor authentication for business and personal accounts, including your email accounts. Create strong passwords and change these passwords frequently. Thank you again. We ask you to please visit the raccoon.ic3.gov website to help us identify additional victims and to report any suspected cybercrime to law enforcement as soon as possible. And next, I would like to invite SAC Mark Martin, Army CID, to the podium for a few remarks.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Martin. I'm the Special Agent in charge of Army CID's Cyber Field Office, headquartered out of Quantico, Virginia. On behalf of Army CID, I'd like to say thank you to the FBI, their task force, the DOJ, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and of course our international partners in Italy and the Netherlands. The indictment today is a great example of interagency teamwork in the fight against cybercrime. In closing, I'd like to say that Army CID will continue to engage key stakeholders and partners and look to maximize our jurisdiction whenever there is a strong Army nexus available. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, gentlemen. I want to commend the hard work of the FBI's Austin Cyber Task Force, with, again, special thanks to the Department of Army's Criminal Investigation Division. The FBI Austin Cyber Task Force is supported, as we've heard, by Army CID, the Austin Police Department, the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, Round Rock Police Department, and the Texas Department of Public Safety. I also want to add our thanks and gratitude for our international partners. We wouldn't be here today without them. Those in Italy and the Netherlands. That includes the Ministry of Justice for Italy and the Italian Guardia di Finanza, as well as the prosecuting authorities in the province of Brescia in Italy. In addition, I thank the Ministry of the Justice and Security for the Netherlands Police, and the Netherlands Public Prosecution Service. Finally, I want to thank the Justice Department's Office of International Affairs, as well as the FBI's legal attachés. They were critical throughout this investigation and remain critical to it. We can take some questions if you have them. I just want to sort of remind everyone, we are at the initial stage of this prosecution. You've got the unsealed indictment, which contains the 4 counts. It's got some good information. That attachment B that you see today sort of gives you an example of how the raccoon infostealer works with the phishing email scam, so you can see that. But we'll do our very best to answer your questions.
Vanessa Croykins, 5 Grand San Antonio.
Hi there.
In the indictment, it mentions that the credentials stolen from a U.S. Army information system, and I believe something with regards to an individual in Colleen that worked with U.S. Army medical facilities. Do these, based on what you know so far, the information stolen, does it extend farther than personal information? And is there some kind of threat to national security? What was stolen access?
Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to comment outside what we've got in the indictment there, but I appreciate your question. Thank you. Anybody else?
Is Raccoon still operational?
This particular version of Raccoon, as I understand it, please correct me if I'm wrong, is not, it's not currently operating, correct? However, if you were to Google Raccoon infostealer, you might come up with some sites that show you additional versions, new versions, operational versions. This particular one was dismantled. However, again, as we know from cyber criminals and how they conduct their activities, these things are constantly churning throughout the world.
What's Sokolovsky's specific role in this? Say, you mentioned it's conspiracy, you mentioned multiple actors. What is his specific role?
Again, I don't want to comment outside the indictment, but in the indictment, I think we've made it pretty clear that he's an operator and was involved in the development.
It's also mentioned in here that there was reporting at the time, or there was something on the forums that because of the special operations, seeing allusion to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, is it your thought that instead that was just them putting out a different story and it was actually because Sokolovsky was taken off the board?
I don't want to speculate.
Mike with WOAI News. In this, it said that Sokolovsky was not only making money licensing this out, but the conspiracy also had access to the information. Do we have a ballpark estimate about how much money was stolen or how much ill-gotten gains they were able to get their hands on overall with this scam?
We don't have anything that we can provide publicly at this time, but as you can tell by the indictment and what's sort of laid out there, this is a very large-scale malware operation.
Do you know when this individual gave a timeline when he'll be extradited back to the U.S. and excuse me, how many more people do you anticipate will be facing charges in connection with this?
With regard to the first part of your question, he is in the extradition process in the Netherlands at this time, and there is a specific process there. So we don't, have any additional comment other than the fact that we have made the request, and he is currently in that process in the Netherlands with the Dutch authorities. With regard to your second question, I'm not going to comment outside what we've got. And I know that that's not a popular answer, but I don't want to comment on anything additional than what we've got before you today. Yes, sir.
I believe with Special Agent Church, we mentioned that you would identify the actors. Are there other indictments sealed or unsealed?
I'm not going to comment on that. Yes, sir.
With the, you put out the website for people to log on to and see if they were a victim with this. I'm sure there's some people out there who think that they may have lost money to this scam. Is there any shot that they could get their money back?
That's a good question. And, as I mentioned, when we provide this notification system and we're trying to make sure, because one of the things we did in going to court to get the authorization to do this is so that we could collect as much information as possible, identify as many victims as possible, and then we have a procedure through court and through our prosecution process, and if we obtain a conviction where the judge can make decisions based on restitution amounts, who they would go to, and fines and things of that nature. So it's certainly something that we're very interested in.
And this gentleman, he's from the Ukraine. You said that in there. You told us that he was arrested in the Netherlands.
Correct.
Can you give us an idea? Was he living the lavish lifestyle with all these ill-gotten gains that he got? What was his lifestyle like?
I can't comment any further than what we've got. I know that there is some information that you'll see in what we've provided you about him going to the Netherlands in a Porsche, There's also a photograph of him that is attachment A. That was a part of the original indictment package. It didn't come with what we passed out today because we're really trying to focus on this victim notification system. When the case was indicted back in November, he was at large at that time. So, but that is a public document that's available to you as part of this package that's in use.
I think a lot of our viewers and readers are going to wonder, okay, I enter it in, I find out I am a victim, so what? So what is it that they can do or that you're notifying them for? What's the purpose?
That's a great question. So the purpose is we want to identify them, right? We want to get what information we can, determine if their email is a part of this cache of stolen data that we have, and whether or not there was exploitation involved in any of their data. So when they put their information in the ic3.gov website, if their email address, no, it's email address, if their email address is a part of what we have acquired so far from the InfoStealer malware, they're going to get a notification back and some instructions. So those instructions are going to help them to kind of go through the system so we can identify them as victims, determine if there are any losses, and then take whatever next steps.
Is there something that they can do at that point? Does it help them protect themselves better, or are they still vulnerable if their information is in your database or in that data set you have?
With regard to the ic39.gov site, that's where they can go and make any complaint about, let's say they believe that their information might have been picked up through some other malware or some other type of phishing scam. They can go and make those complaints on that website. The Raccoon IC3 website is for them to go to see if their email address, again, it's just the email address, but that's so important, it's a gateway to a lot of this information, is in that data that has been pulled aside. Everybody's always vulnerable. We're always vulnerable. With regard to what is in this particular set of stolen, as you heard, 50 million pieces of data here, we'll be able to identify whether or not they were compromised in this particular malware scam and to help them forward as victims of this particular malware scam. But we're always vulnerable. We're all vulnerable all the time.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions?
Yes. Hi, Guillermo.
You mentioned pending extradition.
Yes, sir.
Normally, these things are in a packet of extradition. Where do these things?
The only public information that we have in this case to provide is what you have. Other than attachment A, that's the only thing that's missing from this packet, but there's nothing further that we have publicly to disseminate.
Can I just clarify something really quick? I know you mentioned 50 pieces of individual data. How many people specifically do you feel has been affected by this, impacted by this? Do you still have it?
It could be in the millions. There's not a way really. I don't want to speculate, but I think we've made it clear today. This is a very, very large global case, and one of the things that I hope that you'll take away for your readers, for your viewers, is that this is a great example of law enforcement that works together worldwide. And it's what we want. It's what the public wants, right? We've got victims that are in other countries. We've got victims here in the United States. We've got victims that are identified in San Antonio, in Austin, in El Paso, right here in the Western District of Texas. That's part of why we have the case here. But the case itself is a globally significant case. And these cyber criminals continue on. We're going to work as hard as we can. What we want people to remember, and the message is that often, you're sitting behind your computer and you're thinking, these folks are terrible, and nobody's ever going to go after them. Nobody's going to get them. They're outside the United States many times. Who's going to do anything about it? This is a perfect example of where law enforcement got together and worked very hard and will continue to do that. Cybercrime is a crime of now, and it is a crime of the future. And we're just going to keep working as hard as we can. And we want those cyber criminals out there to know that we're coming for them.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate you guys being here.
Thank you all.